Yes, welcome. Sorry about the technical difficulties, Paul. I apologize about that. I don't know what happened, but I'm glad you're
All
here.
good, brother. All good.
Yes. How you been?
Amazing.
That's good to hear that. That's awesome. So
And
definitely,
yourself?
I've been fantastic. The weather was real nice today, so it's always a good thing. I'm healthy. And speaking of health, how's your health?
Incredible. Yeah,
Oh,
never been better.
that's amazing. That's always a great thing. Health is your wealth, so that's awesome.
That's
So,
it.
yeah, joined by Paul Briggs here on the Alan and Aaron Sports Talk Radio Show. So now that the boxing is behind you, do you miss being in the ring, that competition?
I don't, because I get to really explore that with the young lads that I train and the pros that I train, and so I still get to scratch that itch. I still get to experience that ride per se. With a lot of the young fighters that I work with.
Okay, yeah. So definitely that's awesome that you get a chance to deal with, trained boxers. And how was that experience being that now that you're from the other side instead of boxing, you're training? How was that going for you?
Yeah, it's incredible. I love it. I've been around boxing since I was 4 years old, so it's my passion.
Yeah.
And the fact that I get to come to my gym, guide my coaches in how to train the fighters and how to train the general population, clientele that we have, it's beautiful. I don't work. I'm very blessed. I get to I get paid to play pretty
Yeah.
much. So it's a good life.
Yeah. So definitely, are you at the gym now?
Yeah, I'm sitting in our lounge. We have a lounge area in the gym, and I'm here with my partner. She sort of handles a lot of the administrative side of things, and same thing. We love boxing. I get to share it with her, and yeah, it's a good thing that we've got going on.
Oh, that's awesome. Let people know the full name of the boxing gym so they can go ahead and participate and come see you.
It's called Sanctum Forge Boxing Gym. The name derives of sanctum is a place of peace, which is where a fighter needs to be within his mind to be able to fight. And forge were the ovens that the Spartans created their swords in. So it's a place of balance where warriors are created.
Wow, that's awesome. So how is it going to be different from your gym than other people's gym, as far as training and dealing with, yourself every day?
Um, there's so many aspects to creating a fighter, and it's more than just getting in the gym and training the body. You got to be able to train the mind. The mind drives the body. So if the mind is not balanced, even within perception, even within the way that people see the world, the way they experience their world, it's going to have an effect on the body. So there's lots of different aspects of training that we work with. We help the young fighters manage their thinking and create powerful minds to then be able to drive the body powerfully as well.
Yeah, that's amazing because a lot of people, a lot of boxers, they underestimate the mental aspect that goes into boxing. Can you share a little bit about that from your experience about the mental grind of boxing, being a boxer?
100%. One of the greatest experiences just recently that the world has witnessed is George Kambosos Jr. He was in camp training consistently with fights tipping over, dates tipping over, platforms tipping over. The fight went from, it shifted from a few different platforms. The date kept changing. I've been in that position before where you're training at an elite level and the date keeps shifting back and keeps moving back and fighters get injured and all the rest of it. So to be able to manage that, to be able to come through in the way that he did and come through even more devastating than what he was. The longer that he was in camp, the better he was getting. The longer he was in camp, the more devastating his mindset was becoming. So that is a testament to what George Kambosos Jr. is about, and the team that he has around him. And that's very much the case with Australian boxing in general. You know, we know how to endure over here. You know, we know how to stay balanced within what we're doing, and we know how to produce warriors that can actually, you know, produce the outcome that we're wanting to produce.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up George, because that's one huge fight that we felt here in the States, that his opponent kind of took him for granted and didn't really take the fight seriously. What was your thoughts on Teofimo's, you know, mindset coming into this fight?
It's interesting, you know, there's so many times I've seen fighters that come up the ranks. He has a massive win, like beating Loma, you know, and the thing is this, right? If you are not the equivalent of what you are creating in your life, it will end up destroying you. And that's exactly what happened. You know, he was not the equivalent of what he had attained. And it showed, because, you know, the greatest thing that Teofimo Lopez could do is to get a new trainer. You know, because when you've got a trainer in your camp, and albeit your father, I know he loves his dad and all the rest of it, but there's a level of professionalism that needs to come into that sort of a camp. You know, when you're a unified champion and your coach is creating drama, that's pulling you away from your center. That's pulling you away from where you need to be within your mind to be able to then do what you need to do. So he's got a prolonged camp where you've got all these different variables within that camp, i.e. changes of networks, changes of date, changes of you know, illness and this kind of thing. It takes a really balanced boxer to be able to stay the course and stay focused on what he needs to do. When you've got a father who's just carrying on with all the rah-rah and all the drama and everything, you know, on top of what it is that you're already battling, the challenges that you're already battling, then that's so hard to be able to then get in there and stay focused. So when you talk about Teofimo not being focused, man, that kid had his work cut out for him. He was really pushing the proverbial uphill, because, you know, it was hard enough as it was with the challenges both those guys had ahead of them, let alone having your father who's carrying on with all the drama as well. I just think that his team was detrimental to his performance, or his lack of performance in that instance.
So that's, you felt like it was his downfall, was his team more than himself doing what he needed to do.
Yes and no. You know, like a fighter has to take 100% responsibility. You're the one getting in there. You're the one who has to perform. I just think at that level, it's a huge equation. There's so many different variables within that equation that are going to contribute to your success or your lack thereof. And I think for Teofimo, you know, taking someone lightly is one thing, but, you know, when you're a unified champion, if you're going to take someone lightly, you don't deserve to be a unified champion, because like I said before, you can create something in your world, but and still not be the equivalent of what you are creating. And that's exactly what happened there. So if he's going to become a unified champion and still have focus issues, you know what I mean? Then that's it right there. What I just said, you're not the equivalent of what you've just attained.
No, you're absolutely right. And what advice do you have from being a former pro boxer for someone who does have a huge win, like beating Loma? That's magnificent in the ring. And then you get this unified championship. What are your thoughts on somebody? How would you tell a boxer to kind of stay within themselves after such success?
I think, look, it's a double-edged sword, because one edge you're carving out your future, the other edge is going to slice your own head off. And what I mean by that is the way your life changes at that point, when you become a unified champion, when you beat someone like, you know, Vasily Lomachenko, the promo that comes with that, and the way your life changes and the way you're elevated in the sense that, you know, you're the best thing since sliced bread. Everybody wants a piece of you. Everyone wants you to come to the opening of an envelope. Everybody wants you on the next, you know, TV show and all that kind of thing. My advice would be, and this is what I would say to one of my charges, if or when we would ever get to that point, is when you have that win, give yourself a good solid month to 2 months of just settling into the idea of what it is that you have just attained. Settle into the idea of actually being a unified champion. I would not go out there, and this is where it sort of runs contrary, because yeah, you want to push your profile, and this is a business first and foremost, then it's a sport, okay? So from a business perspective, you need to get out there and you need to be capitalizing on all the opportunities that come to you. I just think that one of the greatest things that I teach out of this place is balance. I just think that you need a very mature outlook and approach to those kind of elevations of your life to be able to handle that kind of success. Because like I said, you know, one side of the sword, you're carving out your future, and great, it's amazing, and you deserve it because, you know, you've had that win. But I'll tell you something about George Kambosos Jr. The team that he has around him are so grounded. They are true professionals at what they do. And no one's going to allow him to get his head in the clouds and get wrapped up in the rah-rah that comes with being a unified champion. George Kambosos Jr. is the epitome of what it means to be a champion, because he's a gym rat. As you can see, you would have seen in that preparation. And, you know, he will come back to Australia. He'll enjoy Christmas and he'll be back in the gym, you know. So that would be my advice to anyone who gets to that incredible level, you know, within their career, is to take the time to absorb where you are at and understand how to keep your feet on the ground still.
Yeah, stay centered. Yeah, definitely. You're right about that. And you've been around a while. You know, one of the things that's unique is that you actually work with Don King. How was that experience of working with Don King as a promoter?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was incredible. I got nothing but beautiful things to speak of with Don. And you know what? I was talking about this the other day. I probably got, and Don admitted this to me, you know, I probably got Don at the best part in his promotional career, you know, because like he said to me, I'm at a point in my life now, and I'm quoting him, I'm at a point in my life now where I'm probably making up for a lot of the indiscretions of my life so far, you know. And the other part of it is this: you can call Don whatever you want to call Don, and not just Don King, but a lot of other boxing promoters and boxing people out there. You can call them all sorts of names that you want to call them, right? But anyone who enters into an agreement with any other man has to take full responsibility with the way they approach that agreement and the way they enter into that agreement. And therefore, the crop that is delivered from the seed that is sown within the way that agreement is approached. So Don put a contract in front of me. I had a look at the contract and said, I'm not a lawyer, but what I see so far in that, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. I'll get on the plane. I'll go back to LA. And I'll thank you very much for the ribs that we just ate. That was great, but that's not the sort of contract I'm interested in signing. He said, okay, we'll put that aside and we'll get another contract, and I'll leave this one with your manager and our lawyers, and we're going to go and eat ribs. I was like, great, let's go. And that contract, the second contract, was amazing. And it was very much one that we negotiated, and we met in the middle, and we found balance in the way that we approached that contract, and it was great. And so therefore, in saying that, I only have great things to say about Don King. He was great. He flew my family first class, you know, whenever I was fighting, you know, from Australia to the United States. That costs a lot of money. We stayed 5-star. I had I had camps paid for that were negotiated and all the rest of it. I got to fly in great sparring from all over America. So I've got nothing but good things to say about the promoter that looked after me during my career.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's high praise. That's awesome. And to piggyback off that, in today's boxing, do you feel as if promoters are needed for a boxer of today?
You know what? I think that, yeah, they are. And I'll tell you why, right? I think there's too much in the world of, would you get a bricklayer to come and fix your car?
No.
Then why the hell would you get a boxer trying to promote himself? Yeah. And look, I get it. Form your own promotional company. If you get the right people running that promotional company for you, and you can look after your own promotions, do your own negotiations, work with the networks, all that kind of thing, great, amazing, And on top of that, I'll tell you this, right? Fighting's hard enough as it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yet, if you're going to be considering what kind of money you're making on the gate, or whether or not you've negotiated the right deal with TV, all the other ins and outs that come with running a promotion. This is why people come to me all the time. They say, Paul, why don't you get into promoting? You got a great name in Australia. You're a man of integrity, blah, blah, blah. And I say, at this point in my life, I'm not interested in that. I'm a boxing coach. I love being in the gym. I love growing fighters. I love growing warriors. I love growing incredible men in the world. So I stick to what I'm good at. If I'm a bricklayer, I'm not going to go and try and fix a car.
Stay in your lane, as they would say. Yeah.
I stay in my lane.
That's awesome. That's awesome advice.
And I want to become the best at staying in my lane. I just think, one of the greatest things, and I learned so much from working with Don King, and he said to me, listen, what's 80% of nothing when I'm going to give you 25% of a massive pie? And I said, I get that. I understand that, and so from 25%, you can work your way up, but the problem is too many boxers, when they create their own promotional company, and because when you create your own promotional company, you're now dealing with TV networks.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Do you have the ability and the experience within negotiating to do deals with TV networks? Or do you have the ability to get the right people on board who have the ability to do deals with TV networks? You know what I'm saying? And have you developed those relationships in your time? See, the thing is this. Where do most boxers come from?
Oh, place like yourself, your gym, all over,
The street.
The street, yep.
Right? Most boxers, and I'm not generalizing, but most, right? The majority of boxers and boxing in general was the lower socioeconomic aspect of life, because that's where the fight comes. That's where the want to overcome your position in life. That's where you want to elevate your status. That's where you want to give your family everything that they've never experienced before comes from. Okay. So I've got fighters in my gym, and it's interesting because, my partner pointed out, we have a very, very high-end clientele within our gym. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, and therefore a lot of the kids that I have in here, a lot of them go to private schools and that kind of thing, and I'm sort of looking at it just going, I love them all, and they all do amazing, and they all have great work ethic, right? And this is the only other thing when you talk about kids who come from the higher end of town. Most of them do have great work ethic, okay? Because the other thing is, when I'm working with kids who come from, and like I've got two kids that train side by side, and they're amazing, and they have the most incredible connection. One's from one end of town, one's from the other end of town, yeah? And yet they're learning so much. I'm teaching them how to learn so much from each other's experience. Yeah. So when you get a kid who comes from the higher end of town, they do have a good work ethic, but they lack the hunger.
Yeah.
When you get a kid from the lower end of town, they lack the work ethic because they've never been taught it. They've never been taught, given the right example, but they have the hunger. Yeah. So when you can be in a gym and say like myself, where you've got kids coming from all over, and you have someone like myself who can sit down and go, you know what, you two, and these two kids never spoke to each other in the gym. They'd spar each other and they'd train side by side, but they wouldn't say a word. Why? Because they didn't understand each other. And one day I said to them, go and sit on that chair over there and get to know each other. I want you to come back and tell me 5 things that you know about each other that you didn't know before. And they went and they sat there. And by the end of the session, I kind of forgot about them. By the end of the session, they're sitting there wide-eyed and they're looking at each other. And they're going, wow, wow. I said, oh, come back over here. And they come running over. And I said, what do you know? And they're like, he's exactly like me. I'm like, of course he is. Of course he is. So they make connection, you know, and in that they could grow their experience of training, you know. So what do we do here that maybe a lot of other gyms don't do is we touch on more of the internal experience of what it means to be a warrior, more than just the external experience of grinding in a gym.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you're on our show at the Alan and Aaron Sports Radio Show, because one thing that I wanted you to kind of clear up, this year was the 10-year anniversary of the Danny Green fight. I wanted you to kind of clear the
I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't aware of that.
Is a 10-year anniversary this year. So it's like, I kind of wanted you to have the platform to kind of clear the ear, say your side, because that was one thing that just kept popping up. And I think you are a warrior, and people should hear from you yourself about that situation with Danny Green.
Okay, so there's a lot of things that the public aren't aware of that happened after the fight. There was an investigation that went into that fight because there was a mad betting push at the last minute that went. There was a lot of people betting me to get knocked out in the first round, betting on me to get knocked out in the first round. So when investigators looked into it, and they went, hang on a second, at the last minute, there's a huge influx of people betting on Briggs to go down the first round, and that's what happens. And I'll tell you why that happened. The last sparring session that I had, like, I was cooked, right? I take full responsibility for that performance. I shouldn't have been in there. Now, when people turn around and when I point the finger at me and say, you're a con man because you took the fight and you knew you weren't right and you shouldn't have got in there. I'm a fucking warrior. You cut my arms off, I'm going to kick you. You cut my legs off, I'm going to bite you. You cut my head off, parts of my body are going to come at you still. That's what it means to be a warrior. So you come at me and say, when all I've known since, you know, I turned professional when I was 16 years old. All I've known, and one of the hardest transitions I've ever had to do when I retired from fighting, is becoming a gym owner, running a business, earning a living, working 16-hour days. I've never worked in my life. I've been a professional athlete. So all I've known how to do is fight. So when a doctor comes at me, and this is what the investigation was about. The reason why the Western Australian Boxing Commission did an investigation was to cover their ass, because the doctor that did the final examination on me, I had an associate of mine in the room, there was me, and there was the doctor. There was only 3. And this is why I ended up winning in court on the appeal, was because when the doctor did the final examination on me, he said, man, you are cooked. You have some fairly extensive neurological issues going on. I looked at him and I said, man, I'm a fighter. I fight. You're the doctor. You make the decision. I'll fight. You tell me to fight, I'll get in there and I'll run at him and I'll give it my all, because that's all I know how to do. But you're the doctor. And he looked at it and he sat there for 1 minute. He just stood there and looking at us. And that 1 minute felt like eternity. And he said, all right, I'm going to sign off on it. Now, the reason why that happened is the reason why I won in the appeal, because in the high court, they had a look at it and the judges just said, this is an absolute farce. And I'll tell you what the farce is. The farce is the fact that this young man is even in this courtroom right now, because the Western Australian Boxing Commission is responsible. Now, I want to take responsibility over and above that, right? Because the thing is this, if my ego was in check, when Danny Green rang me, and I was at a theme park with my kids, and he rang me and he said, man, let's get it on. And I was like, fuck you. I gave you 3 opportunities when I was at my prime and you turned everyone down. And now you ring me when I'm cooked and say, man, knowing that I'm in financial, the distress, I was bankrupt basically at the end of my career due to a manager, a typical boxing story, which I won't get into. He said, I'm going to give you an opportunity, I give you a leg up. And I was like, man, I'm cooked. You come at me now. But you know what? Let's go. So from that perspective, yes, I'm a warrior because I'll still have a crack. Was I able? Well, history will prove, no, I wasn't. History will also prove that it was one of the greatest events of my life, because it completely 100% unequivocally changed the man that I am today, and enabled me to be able to do the work that I do with young men in this gym now, made me the leader that I am, because it helped me to integrate my ego. It helped me to understand how I overreach in life, and it helped me to understand a lot of life lessons that you just don't get the opportunity to address within yourself. And it was massive for me. I don't think I left my house for like maybe 6 months or something. I was suicidal. I was like, fuck this, all life has for me is pain, so what's the point? And then I met an incredible mentor that has been a mentor to me for the last 10 years. And he's the reason why I have my gym. He's the reason why I'm alive. He's the reason why I do the work that I do. And he's the reason why I can sit and do this kind of interview with absolute sincerity and pride in the man that I am and the warrior that I have been.
Well, that's amazing that you met somebody who can help you and guide you. Sound like you was having some really tough times at that point. Do you care to mention their name now so we know who you refer to?
Oh, the gentleman who mentors me.
Yes,
he's a magister of a ancient esoteric tradition, and he is known as their magister there Russell is his name. Okay. So
I want to give him his credit. Yeah, definitely, for helping you. And the only other question I had on that was, it did appear that you were in a lot of pain with that blow. Explain the pain that you were feeling at that moment during that fight with Danny Green.
I actually don't remember being in there. It's funny, I spoke to one of the commentators at a photo shoot about a month ago. It's the first time we ran into each other since that night. And he said to me, I said, I remember talking to you in my room. And he said, man, I was in your room with your coach all night. I was like, what? I said, no, you just called in. He said, no, brother. He said, we put you to bed after they released you from hospital, and you had a really bad concussion. And he said, I was in the lounge room all night long. He said, and we checked on you throughout the night, because I said to check on you to make sure that, nothing, like you didn't drop into a coma or any rubbish like that. Just, anything can happen. And I was mind blown. I was like, man, I had no idea of that. I have no memory of how I got from Western Australia back to Queensland, which is like going from LA to New York. There's another fighter in this country, Anthony Mundine, and his manager, Coda Nasser, who I will never, I'll never forget his generosity, his kindness, and his love that he showed towards me, after that fight. When I got back to Sydney, I flew from Perth back to Sydney, and then from Sydney back to the Gold Coast. And, he came and got me from the airport and said, man, anything you need, you call me. And I will forever, I haven't seen him in a long time, but, if I saw him again, I'd hug him and kiss him, because he's a beautiful man, and he checked on me, he called me a month or two later and checked on me, and this is why I love boxing. Everyone goes on, or many people go on about the shit side of boxing, and about the people in boxing, all the rest of it. And I can 100% disagree. Boxing is full of beautiful people who care about each other, who at one point, Anthony Mundine, and I was chasing him, and I was calling him out and all the rest of it. And I had heated discussions with Coda Nasser at different times, at different venues. And when the chips were down, that man just stepped up and he was there, and he was beautiful to me. I get emotional talking about it, but he was beautiful to me. He didn't have to do the things that he did. For what reason? There was absolutely no reason why he needed to help me, and he did. So that's why I love boxing. That's why boxing is incredible, because there are beautiful people in boxing.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, that you do meet people that are, godsend, that just come out and they help you out. And like you said, when the chips were down, because it seemed like everybody was trying to put you down at that point. Seemed like it was tough being Paul Briggs at that moment in time.
It was hard. It was hard. I was rated by Ring Magazine in 2009, I think, as being in the 9th and 10th best light heavyweight title fights of all time with Thomas Adame. And to be renowned for my hardness and all the rest of it. No, I was a bit of a man with no development as a young man, and so therefore I thought I was a bit of a hard man and all the rest of it. But I prided myself on my toughness, on the street and in the ring. And and that was both those fights were a testament to my psychological fortitude. So to go down with a punch that was questioned whether it even hit me was so perfect. And I'll tell you why it was so perfect, because for my ego to deal with that was absolutely incredible, and to have people and this is human nature. People have got online and said, I hope you die of AIDS, because you dogged it, and I didn't get the fight I paid $40 for a pay-per-view. And did that affect me? Maybe at the time it did, but now I look back and just go, that's human nature. And I'll tell you why, because those people only see there on that screen what lives in them, and it really had nothing to do with me. It was all about what those people were seeing within themselves, what that fight showed up for them to have a look at within themselves. So, that fight, the fight with Danny Green, this will be the last that I touch on it. That fight with him, I have no opinion on him as a man. I'm not interested in commenting on him as a man. I know him very, very well. But that fight was perfect and exactly what I needed at that point in my life. And what other people think of it is none of my business.
No, you're right. You're on to bigger and better things. You got a great gym. And if somebody does want to go ahead and sign up, is there availability for someone, or is there a prerequisite that they have to get through?
100%. If people want to be a fighter here, definitely there's the interview process, and I'll explain what I mean by that, because most of the time for coaches, a lot of the time for coaches is spent managing personalities, and I spoke to an amazing agent many years ago, and by the name Mike Altamira, and he said to me, I look for kids' family structures that is going to show me the kind of principles that they would sort of be considering and living from within their life, because you know what, that's going to save me on the back end in their career. And I said, what's that? And he said, a hell of a lot of money, because when I'm finding fighters for different promoters, I want to be bringing them assets. I don't want to be bringing them liabilities, and so that's exactly what this is about for me. So there's an interview process when someone wants to come here and become a fighter of mine. And it's more than just me looking to see whether or not they're a lunatic. I've got no problems dealing with lunatics. What I look for within that interview process is whether or not they're teachable. you know, whether or not they're coachable. If they're coachable, then it doesn't matter where they're at, because I can get them to where they need to be. All I need to know is that they're actually coachable. So that's what that is about. And yeah, you know, we've got a website, sanctumforgeboxing.com.au, that people can get on, and all the information is on there.
Yeah, definitely. They should reach out to your website and link up. And one huge fan that I do know is one who made this interview possible, Glenn Earnshaw. And he told me to tell you that he wants a signed photograph from you if he can. Glenn wants to
No problem.
he wants two, one for him, one for me. He's gonna send it to you from Australia. So he wanted to make sure you made good on that.
Yeah, no problem at all. We can do that.
Okay,
100%.
awesome.
It'd be a pleasure and an honor.
Yeah, that's great that you still have fans. And what are some of your goals now in life outside of maybe the boxing gym that you want to achieve at this point?
I've achieved one of the greatest goals that I ever had in my life, and that's just find peace. You know, and you know, many people go their whole life and they never find that. You know, I've got a lot of joy in my life and a lot of love in my life. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got a great gym. I've achieved a lot of what I wanted to do. The next goal for myself would be to take a young man, you know, to a world title fight, to take a young man to that because I've been to the top, I know what it takes to get there. Because I didn't bring the belts home, I feel like there's unfinished business there. So I'd love to be able to, you know, change a young man's life in exactly in the same way Teofimo has inspired all of us. Sorry, not Teofimo, George Lopez.
George Kambosos. George Kambosos.
You know, like I shed a tear when he won. You know, I was jumping up and down. I couldn't believe it. You know, my people that were watching the fight at my gym were still looking at me, going, "Man, why are you crying?" And I'm like, "I'm crying because I know exactly how. Like, I know how this guy's life has changed now. You know, and the way he Kambosos conducted himself as well was incredible. So he's a testament to what we produce here in Australia, and an incredible role model for Australian boxing."
Absolutely. And he's already, you know, he's like you, he's a warrior. He's already calling out his next you know, fight already. So he's not being complacent, getting the belts and just sitting on them, which is amazing too. So
yeah,
that warrior
that's Australia, man. That's Australia.
So yeah, that warrior mentality. But it's called, you know, Sanctum Forge Boxing. That's Paul Briggs. Yeah. Make sure you reach out and sign up. And definitely we wish you the best in your peaceful life. And we look forward to seeing you again on the Alan and Aaron Sports Talk Radio Show.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate your time too. God bless. Take care of yourself.
Cheers.
Cheers.